Hi, Chris here with Rainbow Guys DIY. Today I'm going to make an upcycled dog bed. So for a couple months now, we have been subscribing to one of those meal kit services, and every week when we get our box, there are these two packs in there that they use as insulation. There is a plastic bag, and inside is some already recycled fiber. Now it's a mixed content. I think most of it is denim. It's kind of blue. But there is obviously polyester or plastic, so it's not something that you can throw in your compost. If it was 100% cotton, you would be able to. So these have kind of been piling up because I feel bad throwing them away, and they're very bulky. So I figured I would make a couple dog beds for our pets out of them. I guess one will technically be a cat bed. Alright, so each box typically comes with two of these pieces. So with the two of them together, the width would be 25 inches. So I'm going to cut them down to 25 inches in length as well, so I get a square when I join them together. I'm going to draw you a little sketch up of how I'm going to do this. I'm going to try to make it simple without too many pieces needing to be cut. I just wanted a real quick project. I am going to put a zipper on it so that I can take the cover off to wash it. That's optional. If you don't have a zipper, you can just leave an opening for when you turn it right side out and whip stitch that shut. So, let's see if I can get the camera in on this. And I am left-handed, so I'll try to keep my arm out of the way. So from a top view, you'll basically have your 25-inch square. And I'm going to want it to be about 2.5 inches. So in 3D form, it's going to be a 25-inch square that's about 2.5 inches tall. What that means is I'm going to need to cut one continuous piece of fabric for the way I'm going to sew this. That would be basically your 25, 2.5, 25, 2.5. That was a horrible drawing, but anyway. So they would account for each of those measurements to wrap around the filling. So that is going to be a total of 55 inches in length, plus our seam allowance. And then for a width, it's going to be 25 plus 1 length of 2.5. So 27.5 inches wide. Now we need to add our seam allowance. I'm going to do about a 1/2 inch seam allowance so it's nice and sturdy. If I need a 1/2 inch on each side here, that's going to make it 56 inches in length and 28.5 inches in width. So I am going to start by cutting out the rest of my filler, and then I will cut out the fabric. I just have this, it's kind of a heavyweight upholstery fabric. You'll want to use something that can withstand some wear and tear from your pups or your cats. So you don't want anything too thin like a bed sheet. Now my cutting mat here has a ruler on it, so I'm going to use that to measure out my 25 inches. And it does not have to be perfect. Alright, 25 inches. This isn't any kind of precision piecing. This is going to go inside of the case, so it's going to get squished and moved around as we stuff it in. This is excess. I will probably hang on to these and make like some couch pillows or something else out of them once I'm done. We have quite a bit of this stuff piled up. Now that we have one piece cut there, I already have my others. What I want to do is just really quickly stitch these together so they become one big square. To do that, just take a hand sewing needle and some strong thread. So I've got my needle threaded, and a real quick way to make a knot is to take the end, hold it with your finger against the needle, and just wrap it around towards the tip a couple times. And then holding that wrap, pull the thread through, and you got a nice knot at the end. So like I said, I just want to get these to stay together so once they're in the pillow, they don't separate and get all bunched up. I am doing 3 layers, and I'm going to alternate the direction of the middle seam. So bottom layer will run this direction, top one will run this way, and then the middle this way, and then the top again in the other direction, just to help it all stay together. I'm not too concerned about it. They are going to be wedged in there, and it is just a dog bed, so don't stress too much about it. But basically, I'm going to start, and when you go through the material, grab the loop at the very end and run your needle through that. This is going to prevent it, since this is somewhat of a loose material. It's not like you're sewing actual fabric. It will tear pretty easily. So now that we have it through, I'm just going to go down through it on this side, a couple inches up, go down on this side, kind of like you're lacing a shoe. And we're just going to do that all the way up. Just going straight down, about an inch in from the edge, and then about 1.5 inches apart for each stitch. You will find it is not the most consistent of materials. Like right here, there's kind of a thin spot. They manufacture it strictly for the purpose of insulating your box of food, so I'm sure they did not have longevity in mind or other uses. So in my sewing room here, our dog Reuben likes to hang out with me. And we have hard flooring in here, so there's really nowhere for him to lay down. So he will find any scrap of fabric that I happen to leave on the ground and use it to cuddle up on. So I figured this would be a nice little treat for him while he's in here. All right, that's one layer. And a second layer. And a third layer. So it's going to be a pretty good sized bed there for him. Now we're going to make the cover to stuff this all into. All right, so we determined I needed it to be 56 inches long, 28.5 inches wide. Half of 56 inches is 28 inches. I'm starting from the fold because I don't want this frayed edge as part of it. I'll use that for some other project. All right, I'm going to save this for another project. And now we have our cover. So I am going to be installing a zipper. Zippers are not my most favorite thing. I went through my entire stash, and the longest I could find was 20 inches. And I have a very large stash of zippers. So since this is not long enough to go edge to edge, what I'm going to do is actually sew this entire seam, and then we'll install the zipper on it, and then rip open the section where the zipper is. So I'm going to start with this right sides together. Take it over to my sewing machine. Alright, so the first thing we are going to do is sew a 1/2 inch seam down the width of the fabric. So the fold is on this side, and directly across this is the seam that we are sewing. Alright, now we have a big tube. Now before we sew up the two sides, we need to install that zipper so we have somewhere to put the stuffing or the filling into it. And we're going to do that right here in the middle of this seam. Got my zipper here, and we want it about in the center. It does not have to be perfect. And you're going to want to lay this right side down. So this zipper has the pull, and the pull side needs to be facing down towards the seam. On this, I am going to pin it. You want to make sure you're only through the layers that you want to be through, not through everything, or if you sew it, you're going to sew it all closed on itself. If you didn't want to install a zipper, you could just leave a gap in here to be able to turn it right side out and then sew that shut when you are all done. That is absolutely an option. All right, that should be good to keep it in place. Now what we're going to do is you want to sew fairly close to those teeth, maybe like a 1/16 of an inch away. You want to sew down one side and back up the other. We'll do that now. And while you're sewing this, you again want to make sure you're just going through the one layer and not both. Okay, there's one side. And now we are going to repeat that down the other side. Okay, so now that the zipper is in, we need to be able to zip it. For that, take your seam ripper, and if you turn this to the right side, you'll be able to see, if you stitch with a contrasting thread like I did, the two threads of where you've installed the zipper. You'll want to leave like maybe a 1/2 inch at each end, but you can just take your seam ripper and rip your stitching threads. Try not to rip the fabric. And then open it up. Now we've made it to the top, so I'm just going to help coerce this zipper pull down into the opening. There. There we go. So now there's a way to get the stuffing in and out. You're going to want to leave this open at this point. If you close up the zipper and do the next step, it's going to make it very difficult to turn it right side out. So back with right sides together, what you want to do is find that center fold again. So if you just grab your seam allowance, find the center, you're going to want to match that center with that seam allowance. And here I would suggest just a pin to keep that in place. Now you're going to sew this also with a 1/2 inch seam from one end to the other. Alright, there's one side. Now we're going to repeat the process on the other side. Alright, almost done. The next step is, you could be done at this point if you just wanted it to be kind of a flat looking pillow, but I want to box the corners so that it will sit with that 2.5 inch height and look more like a finished box. So to do that, what you're going to want to do is mark your fold here somehow. So I'm just going to take a straight pin and right on the fold, just through the top little bit of fabric, put it there. It's just a marker at this point. Then you're going to want to take your fabrics, the front and the back, and separate them. And fold this into a peak like that. Now you're going to want the seam allowance to match up with that pin there. And then we need to mark. We need the line across to be 2.5 inches. That's what's going to give us our height. So I just have a little ruler here. And we want 1 1/4 inch on each side of this center seam. So right there is where I'm going to want to sew. I'm just marking it with a Sharpie. This is on the inside of the case, so no one's going to see it. You can take that pin out because it was just to help us get it marked. And then you're going to sew directly on that line. I always do a little back tack at the beginning and end just to give it a little bit more stability. Sew straight across. Trim your threads. There you go. And then repeat that on all 4 sides. All right. We have it all sewn together. We have our corners boxed, and now we can turn it right side out. So you can just reach in and grab any corner. Now before I put the filling in, I do want to tack these seams shut so that we don't rip them open over time. So I am just going to do that with a needle and thread. This is going to be the bottom of the dog bed, the part that goes on the floor. So you're not really going to see it. So I'm just going to stitch it with this green thread because that's what I already have in my needle. So basically, right at the point where we started ripping the seam open, I just want to take a couple stitches just to prevent it from tearing open further. And a good way to tie this off, while you're pulling the stitch through, you have this loop. Take your needle through it, and that gives a nice secure knot. If you did not install a zipper, at this point you could just put the filling in and then stitch it shut in pretty much the same manner. You can just do a whip stitch like I'm doing, going down on one side and up on the other, and just go along the opening. Or if you know how to do a blind hem or a blind stitch, you can do that as well. All right, now it's time to stuff it. So I think I'm going to try all 3 layers at once. I'm going to rotate this, that might be a little easier. And just treat this as if it is one solid pillow. And there you go. So this doesn't have to be just a dog bed. You can also use it as floor cushions for kids. You can make it on a smaller scale and have it be decorative pillows on your couch. Lots of possibilities there. You can make it thicker with more layers. It's just a really good way to keep it from going to the landfill. Hope you liked the video. If you make one, I'd definitely love to see it. You can tag us on Instagram at rainbowguysdiy. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, let us know. You can leave a comment down below. See you next time. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Also be sure to subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of our new videos. You can also follow us on social media at rainbowguysdiy for even more content. See you next time.